This question is for Doug and Lucy, and Neil can even chime in a little if you'd like. One of the key aspects of this film is the fact that you have a meld of a small amount of CGI with a great amount of practical locations, practical sets. With a film of this magnitude, many directors and producers would have elected to go all CGI or more. What were some of your considerations in making the decision to go with practical locations and sets over the CGI?
The answer to that, which I'll turn it over to him in a second, was fully a Neil point of view. And from early on, when we started to talk about where we would shoot, uh, as you know, everyone goes to the rebate city. And when you look at the finances, you're always saying, well, if you have 5 more million to put on screen, and Neil from the beginning made an impassioned argument that he had to shoot in a real place or it would feel like another computer world. And he made that argument so articulately that as you were looking at the 5 million rebate versus shooting in Chicago, he made the best argument that the creative value of shooting there would more than make up for whatever the financial loss was at not going to a different rebate place.
Yeah, my feeling was, how do you make it different from, we've seen lots of movies set in the future, and dystopic and post-apocalyptic movies, and they often have some great CG cityscape that's kind of cool and is a real perhaps visual effects achievement, but still always feels a little like, well, that's not really real. You know it's not real. And so I thought, well, how do we make this movie, one, different, and two, because it is so much about human nature, it's about Triss and all these characters and being very real with them, how do we make the setting real? And I thought, well, there's one solution will solve both those problems, and we shoot it in the real place. We shoot it in Chicago, which has a monumental skyline, and we use, if you figure that the city was mostly spared damage from the catastrophe that happened over 100 years ago, then the same way that New York looks pretty much like, if you go downtown in New York, it looks like New York looked 100 years ago, plus or minus some glass building. I would figure that Chicago might be the same 100, 200 years from now. And so it was just a way to make it look really different, and to keep it real, have the characters on the streets with the real sun in their eyes, interacting with real locations.
We also found the city so beautiful that when we came back with the pictures and showed the studio, they could kind of only gasp themselves at how beautiful it was. And Veronica populated the book with so many landmarks of Chicago, and that did help ground, just make it seem accessible and make it seem, as Neil said, recognizable. And a funny thing happened to me, which is we had done such a good job of selling the studio how we had to be in Chicago because it was so real. And Doug and I were driving around Chicago the first day, and we passed the Ferris wheel. I said, oh my God, it looks just like the Ferris wheel as she described it. And he turned to me and said, it is the Ferris wheel that she described. So, and our actors really do climb the real Ferris wheel that she described, and they weren't stunt doubles. There was really our real actors up there in the freezing cold. So there is something that makes it a little less sci-fi and makes it a little bit more like we're people, but we're in a different time period.
Gives you a sort of a you are there quality.
Just to add one more thing about Veronica, the last author we worked with was in much less of a position to have notes, and that was F. Scott Fitzgerald. And so we were certainly anxious because the book was such a phenomenon about meeting Veronica and how she would react. And one of the real pleasures for us, and I'm still sort of still shocked at her openness, is we had the production office in Chicago, and she would come and she would see the production designer's sketches of, and now started to understand that 100 artisans had been hired and would start to render the things that she had made up. And as she would look at the architectural sketches, she'd always look through and she'd kind of go, oh, that's a really good idea. And it was with just sort of an openness and a respect for other creative people doing their particular work.